OverDrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Brian Hayes, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. Ryan Dempster here in a few moments. Jay's off today after sweeping the Angels. They're at Wrigley for the weekend starting tomorrow, so catch up with Ryan on that. And a report that Major League Baseball is looking into making starters pitch a minimum of 6 innings before they can leave the game. We'll tell you more on that. We'll get into it. I'm sure Dempster will have takes on that. But, I heard the morning guys talking about Mount Rushmores and, applying it to the city of Toronto. And, I guess with the big, you look at the Leafs, the Raptors, the Blue Jays, you can make arguments that Matthews could be on the Mount Rushmore already. Maybe he should be. Maybe he's not. Maybe he needs playoff success, et cetera. But we know that he's pursuing that. I would think Marner would have that chance if he sticks around and they win. Nylander if he's here and they win, et cetera. For the Blue Jays, they don't have any current player that would be on that. But I guess Vladdy, if he ends up signing a monster deal and sticks around and turns into the stud that we have seen him be the last, 25, 30 games, 40 games plus, he would have a chance. And then Scotty Barnes, if he's here for a decade, he'd have a chance. That's probably what we're dealing with right now.
You'd have a chance, but I think Matthews, it's very clear.
Yes.
I don't think you can't get on the Mount Rushmore of a franchise that's won multiple cups, but hasn't won since 1967 if you do not participate in the winning of a cup, in my view.
I think at least you got to go as deep as Doug Gilmour did, as Matt Sundin did, which multiple conference finals, which again, that's the goalpost moving drastically, but it is the team he plays for. I mean, that's what they are. I mean, I don't think the Leafs Mount Rushmore are all as 4 players that played before 1967.
Well, that's true. I mean, mostly because everybody that saw those guys isn't with us anymore. Well, most of the people that saw those guys aren't with us anymore. So it's going to be tough to pick with any real authority other than just looking at the stats and the number of championships, guys that played in the 40s and 50s and 60s when the Leafs were a dynasty at times.
Right. Yeah, you don't have any takes on Busher Jackson that you want to apply to this conversation?
My Sil Apps knowledge isn't huge, but he, when they voted the top 100 players in the history of the franchise, Sil Apps came number 2 after Dave Keon, right? I mean, and I think that was an acknowledgement. Like that was what year did they do that? They did that in the centennial year in 2016.
Yeah, 16, 17
and
season.
that was, it was a pretty fun thing to do. It was the 100th anniversary of the team. But Sundin didn't come in, even though Sundin had all the records and the franchise records for points and everything, he was 5th.
Right.
Because he didn't win, right?
Which is reasonable. Yeah. And like the Raptors, they revealed their schedule for the upcoming season, and it's their 30th season. And they're going to have a number of different things that will, commemorate that and celebrate that. And I haven't seen anything on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Raptors.com promoting the top 30 Raptors of all time.
Wow. They got to do something to get people to come to the building.
Right. So you got to kind of build that up.
Like Masai kind of hinted at some events this year, right? Some celebrations this year.
Right. You think that's Vince and
well, they're going to do they retire numbers this year? I don't know. They haven't done that yet. We're all waiting for it. You have to assume Kyle Lowry will be the first when they retire.
Yeah, he's still playing, right?
Exactly. You can't do it yet. But, the Vince Carter stuff, there's a lot of playing footsie with Vince and, reclaiming Vince as a cherished franchise asset, even though we all know, those of us who were here when he left, remember it slightly differently.
the revisionist history has, unlike any other story I can recall in Toronto, like modern Toronto sports, nothing is being rewritten like Vince.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing is being rewritten like Vince. And the way he went out and the way it played out and how embarrassing it was for everyone involved.
He embarrassed himself.
Yeah.
He said it himself occasionally. I mean, he couldn't have been proud. He can't be proud with the way it ended. He was a younger man. He was an immature guy. He didn't have great advice around him. The franchise wasn't a great franchise.
Well, the trade was horrendous.
The trade was horrendous.
That's what killed it, too. It was just a horrible trade.
Yeah.
Like embarrassing, awful trade.
Yep.
Like there's no other way to describe it. It was horrendous.
But he quit on the franchise.
Yes.
And he put them in a very difficult position. And Rob Babcock was the GM at the time. May he rest in peace. Rob Babcock was an inexperienced guy that felt like he was really being pushed to the brink by a player that didn't want to play for this franchise.
Right.
Which he was.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He did not handle it well. He did not
quit.
work out a great deal. Rod Thorne in New Jersey, was able to acquire Vince at a very, very low price.
Yes. And then the Alonzo Mourning story was like the cherry on top of how embarrassing it was.
Yeah.
And
the franchise has come a long way.
It really has. It really has.
And Vince is now a cherished figure. Vince reclaimed his, respectability in the wake of being the most hated man in Toronto. Let's not forget, I've never been in a building where people hated a player more than the buildings at the Air Canada Center when Vince Carter came back to town.
Yes.
That was vicious.
It was. Now, T-Mac wasn't far behind.
No, but Vince was worse. I remember when he smacked Mo Pete, and then Mo Pete reacted to it and then got teched or got hit with a technical and got kicked out of the game. And wow, to Vince's credit, he rose to those moments, man. Yeah. He torched the Raptors.
He did get them a few times. Man.
Yeah.
He had a couple of game winners, I think, at the ACC.
You know what? As Butch Carter always said about him, his old coach, the fire doesn't burn within him, but if you light it, it burns bright.
It sure does, man. If he's in the mood, he's in the mood. All right, here's the host of Off the Mound, Marquee Sports Network analyst, longtime MLBer, good Canadian boy. Here's Ryan Dempster. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing great, guys. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's great to have you on, man. There's a lot of things to get into, but, the Jays are at Wrigley this weekend, which, obviously you know that park well. You know Wrigleyville well. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to the show right now, possibly making their way down to Chicago. This is the definition of a bucket list item, I think, for all sports fans. And if you're a Blue Jay fan and you get a chance to get to Wrigley, what do you think they're walking into? How would you rank that park and that baseball experience compared to others in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, well, first of all, they're getting to walk in on a Friday afternoon into Wrigley Field. I said, I don't really know if there's a better place in the United States of America than the corner of Sheffield and Waveland on a Friday afternoon. It's the only game going in town. There's never Friday day games, only the Cubs. And it's magical, man. That's one of my favorite things about Wrigley is that kind of uniqueness of a Friday afternoon day game there. And it's just so much fun. The atmosphere is great. Both teams obviously not playing like they would like to be playing, but that aside, you're going to have a blast. The people are friendly. Walk around, go sit in the bleachers, go say hi to somebody, talk to a Cubs fan, hit Murphy's bleachers up if you can, or Bernie's, and just take it all in because it's really special. And I look back at a few years back when the Blue Jays came into town and how well the Blue Jays fans traveled, and being a Canadian walking around, I was big smile on my face. Now, mind you, I was walking around with Don Cherry, so it was pretty cool. But it was really awesome just to see how well Jays fans traveled down to Chicago.
So Don Cherry was down for the series. Like, how was Cherry down there, and how did you connect with him?
I got an amazing story. I'll try to get through real quick. So Don Cherry, we kind of put a request in through Greg O'Halloran, who's a friend of mine, to throw out the first pitch or come sing the stretch or whatever it was, whatever we could have them. The Blue Jays were in town. It would be a great thing. And so Don said, yeah. Well, the day Bob Elliott was going to be coming with Don down just to have a travel guide, and Bob got sick. So he was like, I can't travel with him, So Greg said, I'll do it. So I booked these flights for them to come down. Well, I guess when I was booking the flights, I messed up and booked them for a week later, not knowing. I thought I had everything good. I was putting passport numbers in, all kinds of stuff, and I booked them the wrong weekend. So this is the night before, and I didn't know what to do. And I called the legend, the big left-hander John Lester, and I said, hey, buddy, I need a favor, dude. And John had in his contract so many hours on a private plane. And so I said, can I have just a little bit? Just I can send him home on a regular plane, but I want a private jet to be able to bring him down, the hour flight or hour and a half flight. And he said, absolutely. So John took care of it and flew Don and Greg and Greg's cousin down from Toronto down to Chicago. And he came down and did the seventh inning stretch. And it was just absolutely, he was wearing his cherry suit. It was so incredible. Wow. It was such a special day. It's a beautiful day at Wrigley. And then, he capped it off. A Canadian kid's dream. I go to his hotel to say thank you, and I knock on the door. I'm with my buddy Evan Myers, a firefighter from Vancouver, and I said, Don, we were going to dinner. I just wanted to say thanks. Oh, come on in. He opens the door, and he's got, you want a beer? And he went to the bathroom, and he pulled out the trash bin that he had filled with ice, and filled it with beer, just like a hockey locker room. And we sat around and he told stories and we kept pushing our reservation back. It was arguably one of my greatest weekends ever at Wrigley Field with that moment right there. It was spectacular.
Unreal. That's great.
That is incredible. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So much
absolutely
fun.
Amazing.
Shout out to John Lester too, man.
No
beauty.
kidding. The best of the best. There's people who are great teammates and are giving and generous and whatever you need, and then there's John Lester. He's in a league of his own.
Oh.
Hey, Ryan, that's a tremendous story. But Hayes and I were talking before you came on about this proposal, and it's just that right now. But there's long been this idea that Major League Baseball needs to restore the prominence of the starting pitcher. And now there's this concept out there that, hey, you could put a innings minimum. You gotta pitch 6 innings as a starter to try and get the strikeouts down and get pitchers' innings up. What do you make of this? Have you heard much about it, and do you have a reaction?
Well, I love the starters to throw more. I think if we get it's fundamentally it's got to start sooner. It has to start at a younger age where we let pitchers pitch. And I don't mean blow a 12-year-old kid out. I mean, like, if you have an 18-year-old kid, it's okay if he throws more than 4 innings in a minor league start, You got to be able to build them up, because to just come up to the big leagues after being conditioned for years in the minor leagues to go out there and have a workload of 180 to 200 innings, I think you have to start, at a kind of a fundamental level. So if we do that, I think tying incentive, like if you take your starting pitcher out, you lose your DH. I know that's been floated around as an idea. I love that because that's incentivizing keeping your starting pitcher in. And going back to the fundamentals of teaching them how to navigate a lineup 3 times. Like, that was the whole thing. If I went out and faced the lineup and I started the game and I went fastball, breaking ball, strike 1, and then I come in the dugout and the manager would be like, what are you doing? Why are you, he hasn't hit your fastball yet.
Right.
I think if we get back to that core of teaching that way and saying, how do we get guys through a 3rd time through the lineup instead of how do we take guys out a 3rd time through the lineup so that we can get to some other reliever who maybe can. We don't know. Like Lou Piniella always said, when things are going great, son, and I point to the bullpen, I'm risking something going wrong. So let's get back to
Yeah, listen, I'm all for that. I one angle I don't know if they're thinking of here, and like you said, there could be some sort of punitive damage that comes with pulling them out. Like you lose something, like you lose the DH. I just wonder about it. Like everything that they are trying to do here, and everything Major League Baseball and the commissioner are trying to implement is to benefit the fans. Mm-hmm. And I picture showing up at a game. And as much as I want to see a horse pitch, I want to see that. I want to see the starting pitchers. But I don't want to see a guy get blown up in the 1st inning and have to stay in there. And I'm like, why is this guy still pitching? Like, why am I watching this guy? It's 7-0. He's thrown 45 pitches. Get him out. I don't need to see that.
No, and that's my point about getting back to it. Like fundamentally, I don't want to see that either. I don't want to leave a guy in just to leave him in.
Right.
I just want to see the ability, and that's one avenue when you punish a team for a pitcher sucking, then that has to happen. But I mean, that's part of it, right? Like now you got to pinch hit some guys, and maybe you got to let a reliever go a little bit longer. Maybe for some weird reason, the starting pitcher who's going to start in 4 days has to go put his cleats on and go down the bullpen. That's just what we have to do today, and we'll be all right. Everybody will be all right, but we'll only be all right if we condition the young player, because it's not fair to a young guy who, at the high school, college, whatever level, then the minor leagues is conditioned one way, and then we get to the big leagues and we expect something different. I think you have to start that way. You have to let them run polls, make them work really hard so that they can handle that workload of 200 innings. Like I did that, I think 6 times or 7 times in my career. It's a lot of hard work. You have to be ready to be able to do that. You have to pitch when you're fatigued. You have to be able, like Greg Maddux would always say, you don't even start pitching until you get to 100 pitches.
Yeah.
Before that, you should already be there comfortable. So, yeah, I just think it takes a different training method. I hope that if they do incentivize it, that they train accordingly. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to see guys get hurt.
For sure, Ryan. Well, yeah, this is just a proposal, and I know that they were talking about this is going to take years of advanced planning. To your point, like you're going to have to really prepare pitchers for this. And to your point, Hayes, about what if a guy is getting shelled? Apparently, some of the proposals include exemptions, right, or exceptions. You can take him out if he's given up 4 or more earned runs. You can take him out if he's thrown 100 pitches before the 6th inning, and that type of stuff. So, or if he's hurt, you can take him out. Now that one, Brian, if you got an exception that he's hurt and you can take him out, doesn't that just open it up to basically anybody can say they're hurt at any given moment, right?
The manager's like, I hate to break it to you, but you're hurt now.
Yeah, or have like a challenge or a flag system, or you get a punch card. You get so many punches throughout the year, or throughout the week, or whatever it is. I get 1 punch a week where I can use this to lift the pitcher and not be penalized. Like, we're finding out different ways of doing this stuff. We have ways of challenging, which is great, and then soon to be ball strike. We got all these different things, so why not have I get this, and maybe you can store them up. Maybe if you don't use it in 1 week, you get to roll it into the next week. Who knows? I mean, we got a lot of smart people working the game, and I know that what they're trying to do is great, and they're trying to incentivize that, and I think it's important, and helpful, and I think it's a great idea, and obviously a challenge too, right? Because there's always going to be the little nuance thing we don't find, and somebody's going to figure it out, but that's all part of it too. So as long as they're always trying to continue to grow the game, that's really important.
With Ryan Dempster, at any point, like any of these rule changes that we've already seen, any possible rule changes in the future, like the one we're talking about, at what point does the barrier break to the point where you think it's like an attack on the game? Like you're a ball player, you're a purist, you love the sport. Do you feel like Rob Manfred and company, are they attacking the purity of the sport, or is that hyperbole in your opinion?
I think it's a little bit hyperbole. I think there's a little bit of circumstance has changed, right? Like the world has sped up so much in the last 10 years, the last 20 years, but especially the last 10, right? And if we want to keep people glued to the game, the reality is that we got to move things faster. Things got to happen quicker, right? Like it's just, otherwise we lose people's attention span. So we have to be able to always kind of evolve a little bit. I would say this. I would say that if we're changing rules of the game and we're doing that, then why don't we just evaluate all the rules of the game? Like sometimes like the obstruction rule that we've seen called a few times now, where a guy's trying to go back to the base and he bumps into the guy who's not even fielding the ball and now he's out. Or the balk rule, like where a guy's shouldn't be deceiving the runner. If I'm on the mound and I go to lift the ball up into my hand and it drops out of my hand, am I really affecting the play? Like, was the guy going to steal home until I did that? Like, I think there's a lot of rules that were put in place 100 years ago that maybe we can look at and say, let's just take a look as a collective unit. And I think that we're doing that. But, I don't think anybody's attacking the game. I think Rob, knowing him and listening to him talk and have a conversation, is truly trying to do the best he can for the game and make it a players' league and what the players want and what the fans want.
Hey, Ryan, Aaron Judge has seen the batter before him in the order intentionally walked twice in his career. One was in Judge's rookie season. The other one was last night when the manager of the Chicago White Sox intentionally walked Juan Soto to get to Aaron Judge, who promptly, of course, slammed a home run. If you're on the mound and your manager tells you, walk Soto to get to Judge, how do you react?
My reaction as a young guy would be not much. As a veteran guy, would be like, well, why don't I just walk Aaron Judge too? Because we have another open base.
Right.
Keep it going.
Reality, right? Like we get so caught up in second and third, and we say there's an open base, but when it's first and second, we don't ever think that base is open for some reason. Like, I know you're putting a runner in scoring position, but at the same time, as Aaron Judge, this guy is the greatest home run hitter of his generation since Babe Ruth. Like this is the fact. So he's hit a home run, 300 home runs quicker, 132 games quicker than Ralph Kiner, who was now second in that. Like, that's a whole entire season before. So, like, I've been saying it for a while, and I love watching Aaron Judge hit. I think it's great for the game of baseball. But if I'm trying to win ball games and Aaron Judge can change the score to the point where it affects our game, like if they're up 5 runs, cool, whatever, or we're down 10, whatever. But if he can manipulate the score, he's not hitting. I'm sorry, I'm putting him on first base. It's just how it has to be. I'd walk him with the bases loaded in the first inning if it meant that I would. I just think he's so. This isn't a 240 hitter that's man. He's at 330. He's hitting the ball in the screws every time up. And then you fall behind in the count. Go to first, pal. I'll worry about Austin Wells. Austin Wells has to repeatedly beat me before I'm going to start pitching to Aaron Judge if I'm trying to win.
Yeah, and he made them pay, as you would expect, like you said. I mean,
And an honest conversation with your pitchers. Like, guys, listen, this isn't a knock on you, man. He's doing it to everybody. And, I'm just going to put him on, and that's how it's going to be. And we're all on the same page. And you go get Austin Wells because you can get that guy out until he proves otherwise.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And, we were talking, obviously the Yankees, maybe the most storied franchise in sports. Like, forget Major League Baseball. And, you mentioned Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, DiMaggio, all the way down, Jeter, Berra, Reggie Jackson. Like, they've had so many all-time great players. I'm curious if you think it's even possible or worth the time to even discuss the idea of Judge, like, breaking into a Mount Rushmore situation there with the Yankees. Like, is it even possible? Like, if he wins a World Series or two, mashes 1 million home runs, is the captain and the man for another 7 or 8 years, like, do you think it's possible for him to get into that category, or it's too hard to climb that mountain because of the Yankees and how many just unbelievable players they've had?
Yeah, I think the only thing that gets in the way of that is health. I think that, when you sign guys to big long-term deals, the biggest question outside of health that you're going to have is this guy going to show up every day and the money doesn't affect him? Because the reality is it does affect guys, whether that's for a year. We see it all the time, right? Like, guys sign a big deal, their first couple of years of their deal, they struggle, and then they get hot again because it's the last year. Like, it happens all the time. So does it affect him? And I know Aaron Judge, and I know this guy, and I know how he goes about his business. I how he carries himself and his determination for greatness, and he understands all the things that come with being the captain of the Yankees, that I don't think that's ever a concern. So I think health is the only thing that stops us 8 years from now having a conversation about will he catch Barry Bonds? Will he surpass Babe Ruth? I just think that we're talking about a generational player. I said it today on the show. I don't think we really truly realize, because when we're going through something and we're watching it in real time, we don't understand until it's all done greatness and, or at least sustained greatness. And I think we're talking about one of those guys that you're darn right he's going to be on the Mount Rushmore of the New York Yankees, and that's because he's that good, and he's going to hit a whole bunch more home runs, and the only thing that will ever stop that is going to be health.
Speaking of a guy who's making a case for Mount Rushmore status, it's a short sample size, but Vladdy's last 40 games, Ryan Dempster, are really impressive. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. absolutely on fire of late for the Blue Jays. And you were talking about the money and how it affects guys. He's obviously been up for a contract extension for quite some time. It's a perpetual theme on this station and every other one that talks about the Blue Jays. How do you feel, if you're in that front office of the Toronto Blue Jays, that he is absolutely electric right now, probably the hottest hitter in baseball, certainly since the All-Star break, and yet you also know that he had a 2022 and a 2023 that were not so hot, and a 2021 that was MVP worthy, if not for a guy named Shohei Ohtani. How do you approach the contract of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if you're in the Blue Jays front office?
I imagine they want to sign him. When you've signed a player and you've developed him, and he's done all these things in a uniform, he's been an MVP candidate, he's done all these things, All-Stars. You don't want to let those guys go. I talked to Theo Epstein one time about that. Talking about Chris Bryant, and he said, the hardest thing you'll ever do as a running a team is trading an MVP away. And, that's an iconic player. And Vladdy has become an iconic player for the Blue Jays. You look at his career and what he's been able to do. I mean, 150-plus home runs, close to 500 RBIs. And that's, you're talking about a shortened season of 2020 in there. And, since then, I mean, it's been pretty steady. And, really his only kind of down year, I would say, would be 2023. Even 2022, that's a good year. I mean, he was 30 and 100, you want to call it, whatever is right around there. And otherwise, and then he's going to do it again this year. And it's like, is it driven because you're going to be a free agent? Sure, 100%, man. Money is a motivation. But I think Vladdy's upbringing, watching his dad, being around the game. I think he just wants to be great. And so if I'm the Blue Jays, I'm trying what I can to sign him. I am, and I'm not trading him away. And, I continue to try and make those efforts. And I think this is a guy that will always hit. His bat-to-ball skills are there. He's got power, and I think he just wants to be really great like his dad was.
Yep. That's what Blue Jay fans are hoping for. That's for sure. Great catching up with you, Ryan. We always love doing it, man. We'll do it again down the road. Thank you.
Absolutely. Of course, guys.
There's Ryan Dempster, host of Off the Mound, Marquee Sports Network analyst. And again, a good Canadian boy. Love having Ryan Dempster on.
Great story about hanging out with Don Cherry after the private jet flight, thanks to John Lester.
John Lester, man, gave up that's you got to fly the plane up and back.
Yeah,
that's probably 4 hours. What is it? 2 hours to Chicago in the air?
Yeah, something's close.
With a time zone change, they might plus the turnaround. Does that count as
ding you for that? Yeah,
6 hours.
Nothing's cheap.
Nothing's cheap.
Nothing's free.
Nothing's ever free. But yeah, Don Cherry. I was not aware that he was down at Wrigley singing "Take Me Out of the Ball Game." That's great.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and that there'll be a lot of Canadians down there. And like you said, a Friday afternoon game, Wrigleyville. Oh,
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, baby. That's
exactly what it was.
Beautiful stuff.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, Wrigley. It's at the top of my list, man. I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of great parks, Fenway, Yankee Stadium.
Have you not gone to Wrigley?
Oh, I've been to Wrigley.
You've been.
That's what I'm saying. I've been there.
But you actually rank it number one?
Yes, the whole experience.
Really?
I don't think there's anything better than Wrigley.
Okay.
Because Wrigleyville, the fact that it's in this residential area, which is so cool.
It is cool.
It's the north side of Chicago, which is kind of similar with Yankee Stadium, but it's the South Bronx. So you're kind of like, I
don't love milling around after the game.
Exactly. And that's like locals tell you that. That's not me, the Canadian, walking in saying, I better get out of here. This is like local New Yorkers. No, you get back on the train and you get out of here. Like an hour after the game, there's not many people just hanging around Yankee Stadium.
No. There's no Yankeeville around
No Yankeeville.
Stadium.
But Wrigleyville, like if it's a 3 p.m. start, you're there at noon and you're leaving at midnight.
Right.
And you're going to a ball game in between.
That's exactly it, right?
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It is the coolest spot.
Yeah, no, I like it. I don't know if it's I definitely hear what you're saying. Like it's a bit of a dump of a ballpark.
Well, but it's the history is the point. You've got the ivory. Yeah, of course it is. I mean, I think they had troughs up until recently. I'm pretty sure I have been there when there were troughs.
Oh, I was there when there was troughs.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know how long ago they got the troughs out.
I think at some point there was a real stigma that came with troughs. At some point there was a bit of prejudice directed towards the whole trough.
Yeah.
And they decide we better update this.
We can go ceramic. Yeah. We can go single urinals.
Let's update this.
Each to their own.
Right. It was a little bit medieval, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's more. It's the experience, because Fenway is kind of a dump.
No, Fenway's, but they've done a lot more to Fenway. I feel
they've upgraded Fenway.
I like Fenway a little better personally.
You like Fenway more?
I mean, it's not. I agree with you. It's not the party atmosphere. Is not the
There's
same.
There's really nothing around Fenway.
Well, there's the sports bar in the outfield, which I like.
Okay.
The sports you can walk into the sports bar. They raise that garage door and you can see the grass right in front of you.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
They have the cool streets around. Like they have the history there, but it's just in a part of town that there isn't really much there, if I can recall.
There's plenty of watering holes and pubs and good places to get lunch before the game, and it's cool. And I do feel like I don't know, like it feels like they've kept it up a little better. It feels
they have
a little bit more of a showstopper for me.
Yes. Well, and the Green Monster is incredible.
Monster's incredible.
Yeah, it probably trumps the Ivory.
I mean, well, they're both great. I'm not
you can't go wrong with either one.
We're talking about two all-time parks, and in a world where, and that's the beauty of those places. Like in a world where the other sports don't keep their old stadium.
That's right. It's a coliseum now.
Yeah,
like those. That's the only sport you're gonna get. Like the Clippers unveiled their new stadium today, and it is the state-of-the-art. There's nothing Wrigley or Fenway about this place. Like nothing.
Not at all.
And that's what is going to be happening in the future.
You talk about toilets.
Yes.
Steve Ballmer will tell you they got some toilets.
Got anything you need, man. You want a trough, we'll bring one in.
They got more toilets per fan than any stadium on the planet.
Any other place on earth. And that really is what makes like Wrigley and Fenway. Even Yankee Stadium, it's new now. They got rid of the old one.
Yeah. The old one was great.
Yeah.
The new one, it's pretty sterile. but it's still on the site of the old one. Or
it's got the same dimensions,
roughly.
and
it's got some feel. They still got the Monument Park and all that stuff, but it's different. Obviously,
yeah,
it can't be the same.
And it's incredible. Like any of these spots, like because going to a Yankee game, if you're staying in Manhattan, it's similar to going to a Cubs game. Like you're going north, you're getting on the subway. Every stop, more and more Yankee fans are getting on. Like that's what I kind of loved about going to the Cubs game. I think I've been to 3. Is you always stay like on Michigan Avenue or whatever, and you take this subway up, and like with every stop, more and more Cubs fans are getting on, and it grows and grows and grows.
Right.
Exactly, the L train.
Yeah,
and it's an awesome experience.
Oh yeah,
incredible. All right, best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050N on TSN Plus. All right, today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Week 11 in the CFL tonight. Stamps at home against the Red Blacks. You know what happened at Calgary last week? They were in town. It didn't go well for them against the Argos. Red Blacks miraculously tied the Rough Riders last week.
Mm-hmm.
Stamps laying 2.5. I'm going to lay the points here. I think the Red Blacks are a good team. I don't think they're as good as the record would indicate. Had some injuries. Stamps, again, coming off a bad loss where they had that game in the first half. Credit to the Argos. Makeshift offense, too, with the Argos. And they put up a big, big number last week. And Stamps back at home. Red Blacks on the road. I'm going to lay the points. -2.5. Stamps cover and win outright tonight. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Find thousands of ways to play. Please play responsibly. 19+. Physically located in Ontario. Farhan Lalji reporting that Chad Kelly will meet with Randy Ambrosie tomorrow. And the Argos are on a bye this week. So I would guess we'll get some news on his status. And I'm assuming he's going to be reinstated. And coming out of the bye, I'm guessing he'll play.
Yeah, it seems like it's heading that way.
Yeah,
unless something goes terribly wrong at the commissioner's office.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if he goes in there and says something stupid or doesn't sound remorseful or, comes off as if he hasn't learned anything, then I guess all bets are off. But I would guess he's gone through everything that they've asked him to go through, and now he's got to sit down, and this is somewhat of a kind of formal stamp of approval from Randy Ambrosie, if and when it gets to that point.
Yeah.
And, we're into week 11. This was always kind of the idea that they'd get to the halfway point a little bit beyond that. And Chad Kelly will resume duties as the quarterback of the Toronto Argonauts.
It's kind of intriguing. You got these 2 5-4 teams. Toronto's 5-4 in the East, BC 5-4 in the West. And they're both theoretically, hopefully for the Argos' sake, both getting some big gun quarterbacks, mid-season.
That's right. The last couple of MOPs.
That's what I mean. So that's a pretty cool development. Like that's pretty much all the CFL could ask for in terms of a mid-season storyline.
Yes. Well, exactly. And, we were talking about it earlier in the week, how wide open the MOP race appears to be in the CFL. Neither of these guys are going to win it. Nathan Rourke's not going to win it. Chad Kelly's definitely not going to win it.
Well, and the guy that some people would say might have won it is Vernon Davis, right?
Yeah. Vernon Adams.
Sorry, Vernon Adams. What did I say? Vernon Davis.
Yeah.
But Vernon Adams, is on pace to be MOP in some minds and may not be playing much.
Right. Well,
which is pretty amazing.
Seems like a foregone conclusion that he won't. Like, I don't think Nathan Rourke is going back there and re-signing. It was more than just a one-year deal. It was a 3-year deal that includes the remainder of this season. But I think it's pretty well understood. Like, he's playing.
Yeah.
And they're selling tickets and marketing like, hey, Nathan Rourke's back.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and if you're the CFL, it sucks for Vernon Adams, but if you're the CFL, you need Nathan Rourke. You want him playing. Like, he's a Canadian. He's coming back. He's going back to BC. Last time you saw him, he was the MOP. And Chad Kelly's obviously a different story in terms of the reason he's returning. Obviously, he was penalized for actions and for what he's done in the past. But his story up until that playoff game was incredible. Like, they were talking about that Argos team last year as the greatest team in CFL history.
Think about that.
And he was the lead dog on that team.
Yeah, and one bad game.
It was a horrendous game.
Big game.
Horrendous.
Big game to be bad.
Yes.
But still, no, it's like, you know what? Like, you want to inject some interest in this sport. Like, I can't think of a better way to do it than to have, because these guys have real talent, both these guys, right? Like, it's like must-watch type talent. And let's hope they can, like, you worry about Chad Kelly not having the reps, right, to board the proverbial moving train. And Rourke hasn't played in a long time either,
No,
right?
he hasn't. Last couple of years, he's barely, like even 2 years ago, he got hurt. He missed a substantial portion of that season. And last year, he didn't play at all. He played in the preseason and then took like practice squad snaps.
Yeah, which is concerning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is not a position that you want to take time off from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, look at, Colin Kaepernick's a good example. We were talking about him earlier in the show as a potential candidate to coach on Jim Harbaugh's staff with the Chargers. But how many years did people say, well, when will he give Kaepernick a chance? And I think a lot of the answer to that was he hadn't played. Mm-hmm. So why would you give him a chance?
Yeah, exactly.
This is a timing position. It's a sharpness position. It's a mental processing position. Once you've gone away from it, like you can't just walk back and pretend like it's not like riding a bike. It's like flying a fighter jet.
Yeah.
Right? Like you gotta be finely tuned to be a good quarterback.
And everything's got to be in sync for you, right? You got to have the right protection. You got to have the right weapons. You've got to have a defense that puts you in a position to succeed sometimes. Like there's so many different elements that go into it. Yet, I think it's a pretty big boost for the CFL. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they'll promote Nathan Rourke. They're not going to promote Chad Kelly's return.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Well,
I think
the Argos might. I mean,
the Argos might, but the Argos got in a lot of trouble with the way they handled it off the start, right? Letting them come to camp or mini camp, and the league was, and I think the general public was like, "Why is Chad Kelly even here right now?"
That didn't ring.
Like it wasn't a good PR move. It
wasn't a good move.
So I'm like, listen, he's paid the price that he paid.
That's what I mean.
Like
as long as the commissioner is saying
he should be, he's your quarterback and he's going to play. Yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-promoting it. I'm just saying, I could see it being a little bit more muted.
Well, and you also worry
certainly compared to Nathan Rourke.
Yeah, like the proverbial soft launch is not a bad idea in some ways because both these guys are going to be rusty.
Right? Yeah,
like you worry that there's expectations that are a little outsized that these guys are going to walk in on day one or game one and start dominating this league like they've dominated in the past, but it might not be that simple.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, like their teams have put them in a pretty good position to be playoff bound, but you still got to keep it on the rails. You know, Hamilton and Edmonton are out of the running, but you know, Winnipeg might have an answer for you. Calgary might have an answer for you in terms of, you know, pursuing those playoff spots down the stretch. But yeah, I would assume we'll get some news tomorrow on Chad Kelly and even Nathan Rourke's standpoint. Is he going to play this weekend? Does that even make sense to push him right in and start playing? I'm sure he wants to, but do you allow Vernon Adams to just play it out for a week or two before you kind of transition back to Rourke? I'm not sure how they're going to handle that.
It's really hard to think of a scenario that is comparable to this. Like a guy on MOP pace. Mm-hmm. And, you know, not everybody's going to vote for him, but it sounds like he would be getting MOP
He'd be in the
votes.
running.
9 games into the season, mind you. It's not a full season. But, like, you couldn't be doing much better if you're Vernon Adams. And you're losing your job. Like, can you really think of, I can't think of a scenario that's comparable in sports.
I can't either. And, you know, on FanDuel, for what it's worth, the Grey Cup favorites are the BC Lions at plus 185. Now, I don't know if those odds were affected by Rourke returning.
You have
possibly.
to think so.
The fact that they're hosting, you know, at BC Place, and you know, they're all in on trying to win this year, but that's another thing. Like on top of the MLB stuff.
But think about it. They're the favorites, and the team that won it is 8-1.
Yeah, exactly.
The defending champions.
Great. Yeah, Montreal's been 8-1. Great. Yeah,
like So
and I think Saskatchewan's a pretty good team, but I guess they're looking at the West thinking that it's still wide open, which it absolutely is. But you're right. Montreal's 8-1. Like no one's catching them in the East. That's not going to happen, I don't think. But yeah, it does seem unparalleled. I mean, he's coming back and he's probably pushing the guy who's, if not the lead horse right now when it comes to the MOP, certainly in the top 3. And yet, I think it's the right move because of what he showed a couple of years ago. And, you know, the marketing perspective of all this, if you're the owner of the BC Lions, if you're in that market, you want to see Nathan Rourke play.
Yeah.
Like it was such a massive story, the fact that he's Canadian and he played the way that he played. And now he's, you know, built on that aura going down to the NFL, even though he didn't play. He still stuck around for a year.
I'm still surprised he didn't wait around longer in the NFL.
Yeah.
Just given the ridiculous amounts of money you can make if a couple of things break your way.
They can.
Just never did.
But it never did, and he's decided that's enough. I'm gonna return to BC, and I'm gonna play. All right. So yeah, we'll track that tomorrow for sure. Jays are off tonight, and they're back in action at Wrigley tomorrow. Again, Week 11 in the CFL. The Argos on a bye this weekend, but we'll come back and recap a busy afternoon. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN Plus. All right. So we were talking about Harry Carey earlier this afternoon. One of the great play-by-play guys, baseball history, sports history, one of the big personalities in sports media history. And I was seeing here in the last hour, Variety tweeting out that I think a movie or a biographical drama directed by David O. Russell portraying the life of John Madden will be coming out. And it sounds like they've tabbed Nicolas Cage to play John Madden.
Really?
Like, give us some Nick Cage on that. Like, I'm Nick Cage on Nick Cage playing John Madden. That's my level of concern. Nick Cage playing John Madden.
Yeah.
My level of concern is Nick Cage.
You can never, ever ask me to stop drinking.
Like, no way, man. I can't accept that.
I mean, he's a hell of an actor. So I would never. He is. What do you mean?
You think Nicolas Cage is a great actor? I know he won the Oscar the one time. You think he's a great actor? You don't watch his movies and think this is the most ridiculous acting portrayal I've ever seen in my life.
He's definitely played some ridiculous characters in some ridiculous movies to make a buck. But he also does those art films too, like Leaving Las Vegas, that are like
good movie,
pretty incredible,
very good movie.
And I do not underestimate his ability to transform himself. Like,
can he pull off the John Madden voice? Is tough to pull off. Like that, I think first and foremost, like that's what you need. Forget who the actor is. They got to make sure they sound like Madden.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like
that's true.
Nicolas Cage going to have some goofy accent that's not going to match John Madden.
You're right.
And I just don't have faith in it, man. I don't. I'm not saying I have a better answer. I'm not sitting here saying I have a better answer, but John Madden was a legend, man. You got to pay the appropriate respect to the greatness of John Madden.
No, you're right. Like, it's not easy to get somebody that sounds exactly like him. Like, that's just like, you're not like getting an impressionist.
Right.
Right.
Did he live some like crazy life I'm unaware of, John Madden? Like, I understand the football life.
Right.
But were there a bunch of controversies and
no, I don't.
You know, like you would think for a biopic, like something wild must have been going on in his life.
He did coach the Raiders.
Yeah, I guess Al Davis
is pretty wild. It was a wild time. I mean, I'm not, I don't know all the biographical twists of John Madden's life. I'm sure there's personal stuff that's probably interesting. He was a big character, right? Like, like when you think about it, this guy was we were talking about Don Cherry. He was kind of like, he was a man of the people kind of guy, right? Like, he'd get absolutely mobbed in crowds.
Yes.
Because people loved Madden.
Mm-hmm.
They loved the video game. They loved the guy. They loved everything about him. He was a lovable character.
He was football. He was bigger than life. Yeah.
So I don't know, but
all right. But you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing what Nick Cage has.
Yeah, your level of concern on Nick Cage is Nick Cage. My level of concern on Nick Cage is more like a pint on the patio. Like,
okay.
I believe in the talent.
You believe in the talent
of Mr. Cage.
All right,
I do.
Forgive me,
but I could be wrong. Like, it could be an absolute.
Maybe it's something in the middle.
It could be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, but I'm intrigued by that idea, John Madden. And it's Nicolas Cage. Nick Cage will be playing John Madden.
It's kind of cool. Like, did you watch the Winning Time, the Lakers one, where they dramatized the Showtime Lakers?
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
I've seen bits and pieces. I've not seen the whole thing.
This is kind of like, it's kind of cool that they're doing these types of sports things. It's not just a documentary. We're going to do a dramatization,
right?
Where we get actors to play the characters, and you're like, that's not Magic Johnson. No, it's not. But the guy that played Magic Johnson in Winning Time was really good.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't sound exactly like Magic, but he had Magic tendencies, and he brought the enthusiasm and the smile and the, so it's kind of neat that they're doing more of this dramatization stuff instead of just documentary.
Like embellish a little bit, and make it actually, okay, I'm down for that. All right, Dave, good seeing you, man.
Nice seeing you.
Am I going to see you tomorrow? I think I'm going to see you.
I believe so.
Yeah, sure, why not? Do this again tomorrow.
Touch wood.
I love it. All right, thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in. TV, radio, podcast, web, we appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll chat then.